If there was ever a time to be down in Florida, it would have been now. From the absolute frozen tundra up here in the northern Midwest. Good morning, everybody. All right. Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of the Morning Tune Up. Cody Workman here from the freezing cold, snowy and cold northern Illinois. But our special guest is someone who I hope is not cold. I think it's a little bit warmer out there. Darian Gillum, Black Flags Matter. Darian, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, man. And yeah, first of all, it is way warmer over here than it is there. Yeah, no, my boy Jarrett, who's from Rockford, Illinois, he's trying to get back home now, actually. There's like this big snowstorm up in Tennessee where he's at right now. And I don't know, it's crazy. I was lucky to get a flight out, actually, from Florida and stuff
Did he,
with all
did
the
he
chaos going
did
on over there.
did he drive down there and back?
Yeah. Well, he drove there, but the thing is, he's not quite back yet. You know what I mean? So like, he's stuck in
Hmm.
Tennessee right now, and he had to do the podcast. And then Danny's been stuck in Florida. Luckily, Danny's feeling a lot better today, and he's headed up to Disney World today too. So at least he's having fun while he's up there. And he's probably going to see the truck race on Friday. But the point is that I'm basically the only one who, of the three of us who went, I'm still the only one who is back still on Thursday. So
See,
it's been a crazy week for those two.
See, our family all the time, we all packed all five of us whenever we would drive down to Florida for family or whatever, because we have family down there in the Fort Myers area. Um, but gosh, yeah, we made that mistake of yeah, we're just gonna fly down there. See, Florida, it's easier to drive down to Florida if you got a group of guys that like split gas money with you and whatnot. But if you're just going down there by yourself or maybe someone else, yeah, fly every time. It's just
Yeah.
too long of a trip.
And plus, I don't want to stay in Florida for longer than I have to. So I feel for Danny on that one.
Yeah, so well. No, but thanks for joining. Before we get going, I forgot to do this last week. Shout out to Aero Racing Designs. He made this awesome, badass logo that we got here that you guys are viewing on your screen right now. Um, I want to pull up his actual Twitter handle so I know that you could reach out to him if you were ever wanting to have any logos done yourself. He's an awesome guy. That's at underscore AR design with a capital D underscore on Twitter. You can reach out to him if you ever need some sort of logo made for your podcast, your YouTube channel, your Twitter handle, whatever. So, all right, I gotta scramble over to my notes here. So, all right, Darian. Well, something I like doing with all of my guests who come on here is simply, just a short and sweet ask you, how did you become a NASCAR fan, and who is your favorite driver, either past, present, or future?
Well, it's a pretty interesting story now that I look back on it. I mean, I'm from Las Vegas, North Las Vegas to be exact. And, just motorsports in general just isn't that big of a thing out here, compared to your typical stick and ball sports. Well, the funny thing about my childhood was motorsports, that was the actually first form of sport I ever got into. And then about a year after that, I pretty much started getting into like all the typical stick and ball sports. So it was kind of the way I was introduced to sports in general was a bit off, compared to most people in this country, I believe. In 2004, I started watching in first grade. Became a diehard Dale Jr. fan overnight. The 2004
Attaboy.
Daytona 500.
Attaboy.
Exactly. The 2004 Daytona 500 was actually the first ever NASCAR race I watched from start to finish. So naturally, I became a junior fan after that, and supported him up until 2017. But then after he retired, I don't know. I guess like my interest was at an all-time low. I just didn't know what I was gonna do. Like, I mean, I love it and stuff. You know what I mean? But like at the same time, the guy I rooted for my whole life up to that point practically is now retired. So it's like, what am I gonna do? So I panicked and made a YouTube channel, and I guess it paid off.
Yeah, it's definitely fit. So, like, who would you say is your favorite driver now that you have? I mean, yeah, now that I'm sure, like, he's still favorite. You and I, we still cheer for him whenever he makes that one-off start in Xfinity. But do you have a favorite driver now?
No, no, I don't think I'll never have another favorite driver again. Probably it's just
I'm kind of
it's
there
just
with
with
you.
yeah. I mean, it's just with Junior, man. It was just like different cheering for him, with his backstory and stuff. And it's ironic we do this interview today on the 20th anniversary of Dale Senior's passing. It's just all the stuff he had to deal with, and just the level of popularity, and also just at the time the sport was in a much different place. It was a lot bigger, so it's like I don't know. I feel like having a favorite driver now, it doesn't mean as much to me anymore. You know what I mean? Because Junior was such a special like driver on and off the track. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's just like I'm a fan of like just motorsports in general now. You know what I mean? Like he got me into motorsports. So I'd say I was a Dale Junior fan from '04 to 17. Then from 18 to 19 was a NASCAR fan, and then 2020 I'm trying to just be an overall motorsports guy and try and get into all forms of it in one way or another.
Well, I think there's that what I call America's most underrated motorsport, Stillcross. We can talk about that some other time and get you involved with
Hmm.
that. But you hinted on it. Today is indeed the 20 years to the day of the death of Dale Earnhardt. We will actually get to that in a little bit. But first, though, let's recap uh, the past 500 this past Sunday. If I could think of one word to describe it, it's kind of huh. Like,
Yeah,
insane.
especially in person.
Yeah,
If it
and
was,
then like I want to talk about it. I mean, I know, yeah, like watching a race on TV or like how it was this year was, yeah, kind of, it was okay. But I gotta imagine just being at the race itself, regardless of how the racing it was a fun experience.
well, yeah, the entire week was a trip. I mean, it's like it's Thursday now, but like I don't know, it just feels like I just got back. You know what I mean? It's just I'm trying to get my mind right still, and like physically, and like I don't know, just physically, I was just sore. My voice was a little off, but I mean, like just the overall week, it was worth it. I mean, Tuesday we see the clash, and we sit right in front of the spectacular finish. Um, Chase Elliott and Ryan Blaney spinning, and then Thursday we got our first duel in, and then like the rain delay happened, and then the second duel was the best one. I That was the best duel I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen a duel so intense as such as that one.
And
But then
not
the
really
truck
much
race
wrecking either.
exactly. So we had gave us high hopes for Sunday. So then like the truck race happens. It's kind of meh to a typical truck race, but it was still good. And then the Xfinity race I felt was the best race of the three. That was entertaining. But then, the 500 happens. And first off, like there was a lot of red flags because the noon start time, if we would have started at noon, like we typically did, it was very sunny up to that point. It was kind of going in and out with the cloudiness, but it wasn't raining. It would have rained probably maybe with about, I don't know. I don't know. I think we would have gotten the whole race in actually. So, if we would have
It would have
started
been
at
it would have
noon,
been
because
close. I mean, yeah, you had to factor in if there was like oh, if there was a giant wreck, was it going to display a 30-minute red flag or take up time
yeah.
that way? But you got to think that oh, if you kind of give a guesstimate, there's probably decent shot getting it in. Which I can tell you, I've probably spent a good 5 6 months accumulated time down in Florida just over the years of going down there for vacations and just time in general and whatnot. Maybe not so much in the winter time, but once it gets in the spring and summertime, there's basically like a 90% chance that you get your 2 3 o'clock afternoon thunderstorm or thunder shower where it just pours and like you better get all your business done in the morning or early afternoon because as soon as that rain hits, you ain't going anywhere for a good hour or so.
Yeah, I mean, that's typical Florida though. And like I said in the beginning, I don't want to stay in Florida more than I have to because it's just a crazy state overall and especially the weather. So I don't know. It's just hopefully NASCAR and Fox like make the right decisions in terms of start times. Like I could understand like a 1 p.m. start time. I get that. You know what I mean? Like I live on the West Coast and just like with the NFL, I feel like 1 p.m. start times in that sanctioning body are pretty good. It's 10 a.m. once over here, and once the football game starts, and I feel like NASCAR needs to kind of move in that direction. I know what they're trying to do with these 3 p.m. start times. You're trying to appeal to the West Coast audience, but the problem is, and this is the reality of it, NASCAR is never going to have a large foothold in the West Coast, in my opinion. I feel like it can grow over time, but I mean, obviously, it's not going to be as big as the stick at ball sports. But I feel like NASCAR can build some sort of long-term base audience out here on the West Coast. But the problem is you can't just do it through start times. You know what I mean? Like it's got to be an overall thing. And I think they're doing a better job with their marketing efforts, especially with like Fox's like best season ever commercial. Even my roommate who doesn't talk about NASCAR that much was even like, "Hey, this commercial was pretty cool." So I feel like if they just keep continue to market the sport in a way that isn't cringe and doesn't lie to people about what it actually is, then I think over time that they'll start to gain some more interest. And then perhaps, once you have some data to back up, like, hey, this audience is starting to watch more, then perhaps you can do some more, 3 p.m. East Coast start times. But for your biggest race of the year, nah, I think you got to keep that tradition for
Well,
the noon start.
sticking on this topic of viewership and ratings, Fox came out with them yesterday, and ooh boy, it was no bueno. As I like to say, a 2.8 average rating, only 4.83 million viewers for the entire rain delay Daytona 500, according to Adam Stern. Uh, so you see numbers like that, but yet they try to say, "Oh, let's have a later start time for the West Coast audience." How many less million viewers did they get by having a later start with a rain delay than they would have just having a noon, 1 o'clock start time and having people tune into the race that way? I gotta imagine it would
Yeah,
be millions more.
yeah, it was certainly not worth it in the end, but it had a lot of factors against it. Obviously, the weather delay was extremely long. And then once we got the race started back up, keep in mind that big one that had happened, it was going to affect the racing. And I knew that immediately as it happened when seeing it in person. I was like, oh, crap. Like, they're already wrecking. Like this is too early for this?
Hmm.
And it took out a lot of very good contenders, even Alex Bowman, the pole sitter, which is now all for nine. He's done. And then it left 29 cars on the racetrack, but the problem is only like about 9 or 10 of them could actually be fast enough to lead these packs. So what did they do? They would just train it on the outside because I mean, why wouldn't they? The big one just happened and you want to make sure your car comes home in one piece. So only 30 or 40 laps counted of actual side by side racing.
Well, that too, and I mean, like, the people who were involved in there. I mean, I know a couple of my picks were in there. Blaney got involved, Almirola. Which,
Mhm.
by the way, he was absolutely dominant in Duel One, being
Oh,
able
it
to
was good.
being able to hold off Logano there, especially on the last lap. You had Byron, even though he had a backup car, he was making his way up through the field nicely. The Benedetto Newman, he had a great car, pole sitter, obviously. So. I mean, I want to blame of if you're those guys that are kind of had a mediocre car or whatnot, you're just kind of thinking, oh wow, all these heavy hitters just got taken out in this race. So hey, if I can just keep my car in pristine condition or somewhat pristine, maybe not in the condition that Red X Modified was in, um, but
That was funny in person.
I was like, oh my, that was amazing just to watch that
And also
car
the
go around.
Kaz Grala tire fiasco was also funny because he went down pit road twice, and we were sitting up in the nosebleeds in around section 490, and like basically the fire extinguisher smoke was coming up. Oh, and there was fog on top of that, so we thought the race would have probably ended because the fog would get bad, but it didn't get bad enough, I guess, down there.
Yeah,
But
well,
up
I
there
was.
in the high sections, it was kind of bad.
Yeah, I was waiting for Pitbull to come on the air and start singing Fireball or something. Um, but yeah, and then you're talking about you had all the fog coming there. It's like, yeah, it's foggy, but you know what? They raced in mist in 2006 and they kept going, so I wasn't worried. Um, but I mean, going back to my point, I don't blame them for those guys just riding around. And
Yeah,
because all the heavy hitters are taken out, and you're like, hey, if I
you
just keep
can.
my car in pristine condition, I got a shot to win this race. Which leads us to our race winner, Michael McDowell. So, you know, I'm not one that likes to gloat a whole lot. Um, but since this is my show, and I really, really, really enjoy it when I tune in being correct from once in a while. For those who tuned in last week, Um, you would have heard this bold prediction. Let's take a little trip down memory lane. I'm gonna lead this off, and picking my dark horses. The first dark horse that came to mind. There's two of them. So I give credit to Busher, but who's the other one? Because I've already mentioned him last year, but Michael McDowell. I feel like
Nice.
is highly overlooked. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
and what happened? What came to fruition? Michael McDowell wins the frickin' Daytona 500. I never felt so
yeah.
smarter, but dumb at the same time because I never put any money on any sort of bets or whatever. And I saw some guy who bet what $70, and
Oh wow.
he ended up making just shy of 5 grand for his
See, I
bet.
should
So
have put him in my I should have put him in my fantasy,
I
my
put him.
fantasy thing. I didn't.
I
I
put him
didn't
in
do
my
too
I
bad
put him in
though.
my fantasy, and I felt like one of the happiest people in the world. Just
Oh, I
who didn't
would.
earn any money, but the thing though about McDowell, I was thinking about it, and is he is he honestly an underdog? Because even Hamlin said in his tweet after the 500 that his win wasn't a fluke. How many years have we seen him in the 500 where we get down to 20, 15 laps to go, and when he was in, I believe, when he was in the 98 Dogecoin car, when he was with Levine Family Racing, and then even with Front Row Motorsports, how many times have we seen him where it gets down to 20, 15 laps to go, and he's just quietly sitting up there in the top 10?
I mean, well, that's what he does, you know. I mean, like he's done that for years. It's just obviously he's an underdog, because of the backstory. Because his legacy prior up to that was always going to be the 2008 Texas crash, And then yeah, he had a win in the Xfinity Series, but like we thought that was basically going to be the height of his career, basically. Outside of having the shot to win these plate races, or no, excuse me, super speedway races. But just seeing him win in person too was epic too. Just it was like, oh my gosh, McDowell won! Like he won the freaking race. He got through the crash, and but seeing this crash in person too was also insane. Like NASCAR was right to throw the caution immediately because I mean, even up in the nosebleeds, you can kind of feel that heat a tad bit all the way from over there. To be
Oh,
quite honest with
really? That was
you, like that,
you
at
felt the
least
heat
I
that way?
did.
Like it had
Well,
for you
at
to
least a
feel it
little
for
bit
you to
because
feel it that way. I mean, guys, that had to have been like
well, no,
a
because like
mile
it was
away.
so cold. It was so cold out there. And then I felt like a tad bit of heat though. Like it
Hmm.
was like the slightest bit you could feel. And I was like, oh gosh. Like and then I was just focused on Kozlowski. I was like, oh gosh, I hope those guys are okay. Because it looked like his fuel cell hit the catch fence there.
Hmm.
And then that's why the fire happened. So the caution came out, and then we see McDowell's team celebrating. So we thought, oh my gosh, he won the race. And then and then in the end it was like, oh my goodness, he won, and we were like screaming, and our initial reactions are actually up on the Icebergs channel too, where we were like talking about, oh my goodness, they won. So it was crazy.
Yeah, like well, you mentioned that wreck and something like I mean, me personally, like I'm always a big fan of hey, like, try to do the absolute most you can to at least let them race back to the line or that if there's a wreck on the last lap, maybe there could be like some sort of like alternate like finish line to race towards, so like maybe it doesn't end under caution, but you could race to some sort of line. Um, but I think you kind of hit on it a little bit, but I personally do not fault NASCAR for throwing the caution there. Even though the accident was in turn three, and they would have been able to slow down in plenty of time before the cars got back around towards turn three. With all the fire and everything, I think it was paramount for the rescue workers to get to the drivers as soon as possible. So I don't really fault. I mean, now, I mean, it would have been nice to see the cars race to the line, but I don't fault them for having to throw the yellow.
Exactly, you shouldn't.
And then that kind of just brings us to super speedway racing in general. 'Cause I do agree with. I know a lot of guys, especially you mentioned him, Jarrett. He mentioned how great the super speedway package is. Um, the only thing though is I'm not opposed to the closing rate or whatever, but we're seeing a lot of these just blocks and moves in general that we really didn't see with the Gen 4 cars and whatnot. Um, and I kind of have my personal theory on this, and you can comment or give your own theory or whatever. Um, but I mean, let's be honest, there's more guys getting into the sport now than, you know, 15, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that, that were able to find a sponsor and basically help them pay their way, get up there, or they knew someone to help get up there, whatever. You really don't have, not saying that they don't exist, but you really don't have a whole lot of those, blue collar guys that that blood, sweat, and tears their way up and eventually get a cup ride. So my theory is that 15, 20, 25 years ago, because you had those kind of guys in the sport, they knew how to take care of that stuff because they knew what it meant. Oh, if I damage my car on a Saturday night short track, that's more money coming out of my pocket to try to repair that. Now you have a lot of these guys who've been able to, they've had good sponsorship or financial backing, and maybe, not saying that they haven't, but, maybe a lot of these drivers who maybe aren't as mechanically inclined. So, not trying to say this is a stereotype for everyone, but it's like, they wreck a car like, oh, that sucks. Oh, well, on the next week, we'll try again.
Yeah,
So,
almost.
so there really isn't that amount of just like, natural care about your equipment. So you
Yeah,
kind of you kind of get what I'm going at.
yeah, and this is like, and also, excuse me. I want this on the record that this is coming from a guy who um isn't really into cars like me personally, because I mean, I'm into racing. I love motorsports and stuff, but like I can't tell you like the first thing about like fixing a car. I mean, like I all I know is like really how to change a tire. That's about it. Like I've worked on like cars with my stepdad in the past before, but like I don't know, it's like I just don't have that knowledge of them. But like when you're coming up in racing, at least back in like the old days and stuff, obviously those guys had to fix those cars and they had to work on them and take good care of them and race them, clean in the race, so they didn't have to work on them afterwards. But nowadays, like you have guys around our age who aren't really into cars, including myself, but and they're racing. And it's just the absolute carelessness for equipment is so paramount, just not in super speedway racing, but just in other tracks in general. But like nowadays, 20 years to the day of Dale Senior's death, it's like the mentality of some of these guys is like they can't get hurt, and that's just dangerous. And I don't know. It's just I don't want to see something drastic happening down the line. It's like I feel like it's a driver problem, and it was apparent in that big one that took place on lap 13. I mean, if you go crunch the numbers of this very race, look at the amount of cars that are out. Like 2016 was like the last race that I truly remember. Wow, we had a big pack there at the end, like a lot of cars were going for the
Oh, they
victory.
were
It was
three by three.
typical.
They were three wide
Yeah.
from first all the way back to 25th.
Yeah, it was typical Daytona plate racing that I had grown up with, that I had been accustomed to in the early 2000s. Because back in those days, those guys made daring moves and yeah, they went for the victories, but they also took good care of each other. Nowadays, it's like with all the emphasis on winning with the playoff system, number one, and also just the mentality of these guys not getting hurt. It's like if you can't win in that moment or something like that, these guys will just immediately throw blocks on you. Which we can leading up to the Joey Logano block. Which like that block didn't surprise me in the end. It's like these guys are gonna do these dumb things because they feel like, hey, look, we're gonna wreck, and if I can at least I can like say I went out just guns a blazing and went crashing and stuff trying to go for the victory, when in reality it's like, dude, no, it was a stupid block, you put everybody in danger, and stop doing these things. And it's not just Joey Logano, it's like a lot of these drivers in general just think I feel like they think they're Superman and they can't get hurt, and that's a dumb mentality that needs to go away at these super speedways
And I
because it's
mean,
dangerous.
you would have thought that they would have learned
No, I guess not.
at this same race last year.
I guess
Gosh,
not. Some of
just
these guys didn't.
we'll get it Earnhardt here next, but I mean that I mean, I assume it's probably the same for you, but I mean, those are some of the most agonizing 2 hours after that wreck. And the reason why so many people were comparing it to Senior's wreck was just because, there was no information. There was no information on if Newman was all right. No, there wasn't a single person that said anything like, oh, he's awake and alert. Yeah, he's kind of, in somewhat bad shape, but, he's awake and alert. We didn't hear any of that. And I mean, when you pull
Yeah.
out the friggin' roadside screen so that they can extricate him out of the car, that was a horrible look. Like that instilled all sorts of fear and whatnot. And it wasn't until 2, 3 hours later, which we finally found out that he was okay. But you know, that's like about the biggest wake up call that I could think of without someone
Yeah, and I
dying. Now maybe the
and
only
I
thing I could think of is that if someone got in a severe accident like that and got paralyzed or whatever. But I mean, this is about the biggest wake up call that you can get. They're saying, "Hey, we need to tone down some of these moves," but they're still doing it.
Yeah, and I had a flight too, so, like, I didn't find out the stuff, and I was, like, worried. I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, this is crazy." And luckily, when he landed, they had just posted it, like, 15 minutes prior, but thankfully, thankfully that 500, I'm glad I didn't really stay for in hindsight because I don't know, it's just I don't think like, Danny had described it as, like, "Dude, it was terrible," and IDK said it too because as soon as they brought out the tarp, it was like, "Oh god," because, like, we
Hmm.
know what that means, just from watching, like, because I grew up watching some of these fatal crash clips, and it's just like crazy how different it was back in those days. I don't think I would have gotten into motorsports like that if a lot of these guys kept dying. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because it was just crazy in those days. It was like a bloodbath compared to now, where nobody gets hurt. But I also think it's just leading to the problem. It's just to this mentality where guys think they can't get hurt. I mean, go back and watch the Denny Hamlin interview from 2013 with Marty Smith on ESPN after his um, uh, season-ending injury with well, not season-ending, but
But
like his
at Auto Club,
season-halting
yeah,
injury
yeah,
in
because he
2013.
he he
Yeah,
he lost like what 6, 7 weeks because of that.
yeah, and this was before the playoffs, a year before the playoffs. So like basically back in those days, like your season was done if you missed a race. You couldn't make up. It's just making up the points was insurmountable, especially after seven. So that was it.
Yeah, so I mean, while we're on this topic, so like we got this whole topic of safety and whatnot. Today is 20 years from the day of Dale Earnhardt's death. Um, I think one of my favorite lines I hear about Dale Earnhardt is what Mike Joyce said in his the past couple of years whenever they've done the tributes to Dale is that obviously he had a great racing legacy, but the amount of safety and advancements that came from his death is probably the greatest thing that he ever achieved in his career.
Oh yeah, definitely for sure. I mean, obviously, like the stat speaks for themselves. Like NASCAR fans and really motorsports fans in general love stat tracking, including myself. I mean, it's even gotten to a point where it's like I've even done like kept track of like video game stats because my own games won't in my notes on my iPhone. But like you take a look at those stats, and obviously they speak for themselves and just like the persona and the way he carried himself and all that stuff. But like at the same time, his passing led to a multitude of safety improvements. Not just in NASCAR, but really in all of motorsports as a whole. It's like, he was just known everywhere, up to that point and everything and well respected and regarded. And it's also the same thing with F1 and when Ayrton Senna died too. It's like basically it's like unfortunately this is true, but it takes like the major stars, the big stars to pass away to ultimately to say, okay, now enough's enough. We need to stop this debate to ensure this doesn't happen. And Dale Earnhardt was our Ayrton Senna in a way, but it's just it was like much bigger to us than that. It's just it was. It's just like he was the face of NASCAR, basically, just like Ayrton was in F1, and like so even some people still to this day are still not fully over it. Like I didn't really grow up watching him because I didn't get into the sport until like 3 years later, but like I knew how big he was. So
Somehow I just think about a lot is what would this sport be like? Who would be where as far as teams and whatnot today if Dale Earnhardt was still around? So, you don't have to give me a whole bunch of, but if you could think of like the biggest difference that the sport would be in right now if Dale Earnhardt was around, uh, what do you think that would be?
Well, DEI would still exist. That's a given. That, like, of course, and I would assume he probably would have given control to his son at some point. And the way his son's running JR Motorsports in the Xfinity really speaks for itself. So it would have been apparent that he would have been a good car owner either way. So I think DEI would still exist. Maybe Junior might have been a champion because, like, I mean, in those days, it's well documented that Junior just his work ethic was sorely lacking, and he says he got about 80% out of his ability in those days. So, like, he really didn't start learning how to actually prep for races and stuff and how to have a good work ethic until he went to Hendrick. So, if he would have had Dale Sr. in his corner back in the Budweiser days, who knows? Like, I think he would have been a champion, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on those 2 points, but another thing I think of, is that we wouldn't have the amount of, safety advancements.
Mhm.
I think that we probably would have gotten safer barriers up eventually, that it wouldn't it
Well,
didn't
it
it would
wouldn't have been a priority. It wouldn't
yeah,
have been a priority.
yeah, you know, instead of putting up practically immediately after his death, we probably wouldn't see them till maybe mid, late 2000s. We'd probably see a number of guys get even more injured with the new generations of cars coming out, and the car of tomorrow or whatnot. We probably wouldn't see some more of those advancements. We never would have had the mandate the not so we wouldn't. We probably maybe would have had it down the road, but we wouldn't have the mandatory Hans device that everyone needs to have.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that I personally take out of his death. It really is a shame that he's gone. I mean, and I feel like that Junior would have been able to get a championship or two. Just um, I mean, he had the talent obviously, but just to have that support. Because I mean, like how much like I mean, because you could see it in those victory lane celebrations when his dad comes down. You just see that bond and that camaraderie uh, between those two, and I feel like that would have carried phenomenally if Senior was around, especially once he did eventually choose to get out of that car, and he was going to be able to put all of his focus on his team and his cars, and that's just like another big what if I think about.
Oh, yeah, definitely for sure. I agree with that one.
Before we get on to our next short segment, something we're going to be doing for all of our cup races this year is that we are going to be giving a podcast score. So for those who, the inspiration for this is going to come from the world famous Dave Portnoy pizza reviews. Um, so yeah, score 1 to 10 of how you would rate the Daytona 500 for this weekend.
I give it a 4. I mean, it's just it goes back to the big one. You can't blame the drivers for wanting to bring their cars home in one piece. A big one like that happens early on, spreads out the racing. It's just like they're gonna just obviously choo-choo it so they can just make it until the end. But in the end, it really didn't work for some. It really didn't matter because we had that final lap crash and it was that really bad. And I'm like, that's not racing. I mean, like that's at least not it's not the super speedway racing I was accustomed to. It's like you had your packs and everybody took care of each other. And if you had to make an aggressive move, you went for it. If it was somewhat reasonable. Nowadays, some of these moves just aren't reasonable. Like, what's reasonable about basically a multitude of competitive cars being taken out in the beginning of a 200 lap race? So you got guys trying to be heroes early on and guys who think they can't get hurt, and it's just now it's affecting the racing now, and it sucks. But yeah, I mean, it's still going to hold a huge place in my heart because it was my first Daytona 500 I saw from start to finish, and just the week was just awesome to be there. But I mean, from the racing perspective, I give it a 4.
Okay, yeah, I'll be somewhat close to you. Maybe just uh a little bit higher for me. So I'm gonna be very specific with my scores. Like I said, Dave Portnoy pizza review reference. I'll go 4.7.
Look that
I
up.
was because I mean I did enjoy just seeing at least seeing cars back on track because of the off season, and I think there was some good moments. You had a good story with McDowell getting the win. Um,
Yeah.
so kind of thinking that account, but I mean, but you're right.
Just
The
don't let
the
the
big wreck.
finish,
Oh yeah,
just
for
don't
sure,
let the
yeah,
finish
for
dictate
sure.
the whole race,
Oh
you know what
oh
I
yeah,
mean? Like, I say a 4 I say a
absolutely.
4.7's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm with you on that. I don't think a good finish should influence
Mhm.
lose it significantly or whatnot. It made it like maybe a tenth or two better, um,
Right.
yeah, but that's it from Daytona. Next short segment before we get into the road course for this upcoming weekend. A lot of stuff regarding NASCAR in Hollywood this past couple weeks. Past couple days. First off, Darren, I don't know if you've gotten a chance to watch it, but Days of Thunder Golden Hour, where they basically showcase the all behind the scenes stuff that went into making Days of Thunder. Great documentary on Fox, by the way. I encourage everyone who's listening to go check that out next time it's on air. But there's a lot of stuff that they showed in there that obviously I had no idea went into making that movie.
Oh, I haven't seen it personally yet, but yeah, I didn't even know that type of thing existed. So I'm really excited. Yeah, yeah, I'll give it a go. I'll definitely give it a watch. Another thing I want to add too is the Dale Senior documentary on ESPN that premiered. I have yet to see it,
Same here.
but
But I gotta watch it.
I assume yeah, I have ESPN Plus though, so I'm definitely gonna give it a watch after this interview for sure.
Yeah, like ESPN, they are horrible about covering the sport itself, like on Sports Center or
Hmm.
something like that.
Yeah.
But their 30 for 30s and their E60s, those are some of the greatest
Oh,
sports documentaries out there, regardless of what sport that they're covering. They're just phenomenal.
which is the only reason I have ESPN Plus in the first place, anyways, just for those. I love those.
But yeah, some thinking about this because I saw, they had to actually put movie cars out on the tracks during the uh 500. What are the possibilities that you think that they would allow anything like that today to have actual movie cars out on a racetrack when there's a race going on, let alone the
I'm not.
500?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the odds of that happening would be. When you say movie cars, what do you mean? Just like paint schemes of the cars, or?
The actual cars they had the actual 46 yellow and green car out on the track in the 1990 Daytona 500. They had the actual um, cars and paint schemes in the movie out there racing on the racetrack. They weren't as fast as the pack or whatever, uh, but yeah,
Oh, that's
they
right.
would be out there just racing around, and so you had
Hmm.
some of the guys commentating on that. Whenever they would come up to lap the 46 and the 51, they would slow down it purposely just a little bit. They would get close to them and like, hey, I want to be in the movie.
I got you.
But I mean, but
That's
yeah, I was
crazy.
like, I don't know if they would actually have. But the thing is also is that Days of Thunder wouldn't have happened without Rick Hendrick because his team they built the cars, they made everything ready, and the thing is also for some of these races outside Daytona, they had to actually qualify the cars
Oh yeah.
to have them race in the race. So, um, there was an actual 51 and 46 out there racing and competing in the races. Now, granted, they weren't really like, hey, let's go, get a good result or whatever. But, um, like they had to actually qualify. They had to do everything like an actual stock car. They had to fit the aero templates and whatnot. They had to make minimum speed. They had to qualify in the field to be able to get that footage that they needed.
That's right. Yeah, they needed to do all of that stuff. Well, thankfully they made the races, so 'cause I'm quite sure if they did DQ'd, it definitely wouldn't have been pleasant
Yeah,
because
and
definitely would have halted production on the movie for sure.
then last before you get on to the next one, just one thing I want to mention about that is they actually did. such a good qualifying with their 51 car. I think it was at Phoenix, where it was maybe put Bobby Hamilton in there, or I may be totally wrong. I think that's who it was. But they're like, hey, you know what? Go compete in this car. And he didn't do all that bad before they had a mechanical issue and they had to stop. But yeah, go ahead and check that out next time it is on Fox Sports One. It was a really good documentary. Um, but our other show here that we're going to talk about is The Crew on Netflix. Have you gotten a chance to see any of those episodes at all?
I watched all 10 actually.
Oh, you did all 10. Okay,
Um,
I've gotten through about the
yeah,
first four, I think.
yeah, and the show has its moments. Obviously, I mean, it's gonna be that sitcom type show if Kevin James is in it, and as a parent, he's the lead role. So I was like, oh, okay, this is the type of show it's gonna be. Like, it's made for TV, but it's not for TV, type deal. So yeah, like it's doing well on Netflix though, in its
Mm-hmm.
initial weeks, its initial days. It's like peaked no, at number five throughout the United States. I mean, that's pretty good. Like for a Netflix show, for any Netflix show to crack the top 10 in some way for a few days or like even a week or like multiple weeks is that's a pretty big deal. So like they should be proud of themselves. It's already a successful project out the gate. But the thing is though, is like when is NASCAR going to start on the projects that actually can market the sport in cooler and more innovative ways than just laughing with it? You know what I mean? I feel
Mm-hmm.
like this is a good start, but like they need to improve on this. And really the show overall, I mean, I think it's bad. It's all right. I mean, I didn't think I'd like it as much as I did, and I was like, okay, this is good. It was pretty detailed and keeping up with the things, but like the obvious ad placement was like both cringe and hilarious to me at the same time.
Yeah,
Like just like the part when they got to the Smithfield part, it's so clear just how like the obvious ad placements that are put in throughout the show.
yeah. I mean, there's times it kind of felt like a mix between like them like trying too hard at a sitcom and then also those Nickelodeon or Disney Channel sitcoms where you had the artificial laughter in the background, where it's like,
Yeah.
why are they laugh? It's not funny. Are you just trying to have fill in audience laughter for some reason? But I mean, there's like a few times where it was like that, but there were a couple times, but uh, like like well, because what was it? They're I don't want to spoil too much, but they're sitting in a bar there, and he's like, yeah, Ryan Blaney all ate all your wings, and he just turns around and is like, son of a gun, Ryan Blaney.
Yeah.
So just some stuff
That's
like that, and I think like Kevin James too, and actually having an actor and a guy who enjoys the sport that helps
Yeah,
having it in
that was a
there.
good part. Yeah, he has a history because he used to do the commands for some of the
Yeah,
races, so he has a history
He and Adam
already.
Sandler, but yeah, it's like it's nice having a guy who actually enjoys the sport portraying that role. Um, and then, as far as kind of how accurate and stereotypical it is. I mean, you get those. I don't know if I'd say nitpicky fans, but like I do think it's funny how in the opening race you look at the monitors and somehow they managed to race at Pocono, Michigan, Bristol. Um, what other tracks were there? There's two other more, but it's like yeah, somehow they managed to be racing at all five of those tracks just based off of the camera angles that they viewed at once, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is freaking bugging me.
No, and like I made sure the diehard fan in me like wasn't like taking the show that serious. We were just
Yeah,
like, oh
and
my gosh, like
you can't. If you're
yeah,
a diehard fan, you can't, be
just
that
have
picky
fun
about
with
it.
it.
Yeah, just lay back.
Yeah, I just made sure I wasn't.
Yeah, I'd say it's like it's somewhat entertaining to watch. Like I'd I haven't finished the season obviously, but if they came out with the second season, I would enjoy it and I would watch it.
Yeah, same here, same here. Just we got to make sure. I hope they do like a Drive to Survive type project that Formula One has. I hope hopefully NASCAR has something like that.
Episode so. Alrighty, last segment on this on the show today. Which by the way, thank you everybody who is tuning in. Racing at the Daytona Road Course preview. Uh, thing that one of the most hilarious things about Speed Week last week was just them going through that bus stop and kicking up all sorts of dirt and sand and whatnot. Uh, And because of this, NASCAR, they are actually modifying the track. There's posts of them on social media a couple days ago of track crews actually putting in concrete and uh, expanding the right-hand corners of the chicane a little bit more, just so they have a little bit more to not kick up all that stand and dust where they were driving over. Um, Dude, I want your opinion on this. I don't know about you, but I think it's hilarious how they have been doing 24-hour sports car races. I know the cars are different, but I think it's hilarious how they've been doing 24-hour sports car races for how many decades? And from what I recall, not really that problem of guys kicking up dirt, but in the spans of 5 laps of a stock car race, it suddenly becomes a problem.
Yeah, basically, just immediately out the gate. But I don't know, like I feel like this weekend's race is gonna be probably more entertaining than we think. I mean, the first time back in a few months on the road course, and now we're getting some guys who have never been on too. I'm really interested to see how Larson will do this weekend on the road course. Just like we talk about like raw talent, being like a key factor at these road courses. Like guys are able to come in and put up these hot laps out the gate if you're good enough. And Larson, he gets a lot of hype and stuff. So let's see if he puts it to use this Sunday. We'll find out.
He's definitely one of those guys to watch. I mean, obviously, you can't ignore Elliott. Um, I want to say, I feel like, I may be proven wrong, but I feel like, he's not just going to go out there and uh, sweep the road courses. I definitely think he'll be a race winning contention at all of them. But if he's actually going
Mm,
to win all of them, um, he would kind of need some, luck his way. And I mean, there's other guys too. I mean, you had Hamlin who was doing well up there the other night. Blaney, he did a great job until his brakes started to fail him there in the clash. He's going to be the guy to look on. And then, uh,
Truex,
yep,
Truex before he spun himself out and hit the wall while leading.
yeah,
That was fun.
and then KB Kyle Busch, I mean, yeah, he had help in getting that win, but he was just making speed in general. Like I was watching that clash, and I saw those top two going at it, and I'm like, with 2 3 laps to go, KB is closing in a little bit. Like, wouldn't it be hilarious if those two got together? Oh, nope, there they go. Hey, nope, there goes Kyle Busch for the win. So I mean, he's like, don't like, I think some people forget that from time to time that, he's a really good road course racer uh, as well. So it's kind of like that whole Gibbs stable, except I'm not sure about Christopher Bell just because we need to see him on road courses a little bit more. But that whole Gibbs organization is probably the best team overall at these road courses.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially Hamlin at the Daytona Road Course for sure. But I mean, obviously, everyone's chasing one man, Chase Elliott. That's about it this weekend. So we'll see if he can put together a solid run this weekend. We'll find out. He'll probably win again, but some other guys in the field, Ryan Blaney, I think will show up. Hamlin for the Toyotas and Kyle Busch as well. So we'll see.
As it well, it's this whole aspect of there being more road courses than in previous years. So, the previous perception of road courses, especially before the uh, latter years of the Gen 5 car, where we were having those awesome races there on Watkins Glen and whatnot. Um, we just had Sonoma and Watkins Glen, and that was just kind of more along the mindset. Oh, okay, well, it's one of our road courses coming up. Just get through the weekend. Have a somewhat decent finish. Don't wreck the car, but just get top 15, top 20. We'll be good. You can't think that way anymore because we got just 6 of them alone in the regular season, and I think because of that, if you have some of those guys that are in that 16th to 20th place category in the point standings, but are really good at road courses. Uh, those are guys that could, almost get their way into the playoffs, not from a win, but from running really good at road courses. and I think that could be a
Absolutely.
big influencer.
Yeah, and especially with all the multitude of like road courses we have this year, and like it'll definitely showcase a lot more driver talent, in my opinion, rather than racing at some of these mile and a halves, with this current aero package. So it'll be good to see driver input being taken into account on race winners once again.
Or sure, I mean, like who would you say are? I mean, I know we're talking about our guys to watch, but I mean those guys that are kind of in that category of on the bubble of making it into the playoffs points wise, but could really benefit from the amount of road courses. Who are some guys that come to your mind?
Michael McDowell. Well, I mean, McDowell's in the playoffs, but I felt
Hmm.
like he was going to be an underdog on these road courses. Mm, I believe. You know, on the cut line, I feel like De Benedetto would do a lot better. He's like a cut line driver from year in, year out. Um, Perhaps. Let me pull up a list. I have a list of the drivers lineup right in front of me, actually.
Why?
So,
What?
maybe Chris Busher, perhaps Daniel Suarez, maybe. Um, I'd say Tyler Reddick too. Like Tyler Reddick, he shows up on these road courses from time to time, and also Chase Briscoe, who's coming off like one of the best seasons in Xfinity Series history, which also happens to happens to have a couple road course wins. So
Yeah,
we'll see
yeah.
about those guys.
It's gonna be a few months till we get to the Indianapolis road courses, but I'm already like keeping him my mind that he's gonna be a guy to watch when we get to that track.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
but all right, last thing before we end today, we were gonna do our guest versus host race pick competition. I didn't really explain this last week, mainly because I came up with it the past week. So here's how this is gonna work, Darian. Each of us are going to pick our race winner and our dark horse, and whoever's race pick, we're going to have an overall host column over the course of the year. It's going to be for me, obviously, and a points column for all of our guests who are here on the show. So, what we're going to do is that you're going to pick a driver who you think has, or either your race pick, and I'm going to pick mine, and whoever driver finishes ahead of the other, that column gets a point. And if you pick an underdog, and if your person who you pick actually ends up winning the race, you get 3 points. And if you pick a dark horse and your dark horse actually ends up winning it, we'll go ahead and give you 2 points. So go ahead, and since I got the points last week from via Michael McDowell, I'll go ahead and let you pick who is your race pick first.
My win pick it's Chase Elliott. Obviously, I feel like it's like everyone's. It's gonna be most
Dang it.
people's who's gonna win pick at this point.
Yeah, took my pick, but I imagine. Um,
Yeah.
but hey, you know what? I'm because of him coming back to the front. I think twice in that clash. I'm gonna go ahead and pick Martin Truex.
Mm, yeah,
So
good one.
that, and then we're gonna get to our dark horses. I'm not gonna be as big stickler on who, uh, a dark horse has got to be like Denny Hamlin isn't a dark horse. Joey Logano isn't a dark horse. Duke isn't a dark horse, but like if you had to pick a dark horse, who would you think?
Kyle Larson, just based off of
Dang it!
circumstances. Yeah, he's just like with him, it's just he hasn't practiced on this Daytona road course, and he always gets hyped up for being the dirt king in a sense, which is well deserved because you win all those races like in a row. Obviously, you have to be good at it, right? So we'll see if that raw talent's put to use this Sunday. We'll find out. So for that, he's my underdog pick. It's going to be pretty challenging.
Actually, you know what? I just remember this, and I am so glad you picked Larson because my underdog. I was gonna pick. Uh, I know he's not racing, but Kaz Grala. He did amazing when he was in the 3 car last year, 7 for 80. Um, but the other guy who's going to be racing in that car this week AJ Allmendinger. I think he's racing in that, isn't he? This
He
week?
is, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So I'm gonna go with AJ. So you got Chase Elliott and Larson for your race pick and your dark horse, and I got Truex and Allmendinger for my race pick and dark horse. So
Nice.
yeah, that's gonna wrap it up. Final thoughts before we close it out today.
Oh no, I just gotta get ready for class in a few minutes here, unfortunately. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's cool. I didn't think I'd be up this early. Like, luckily we got the show in. I know I couldn't do it like the Monday after
I'm
just
gonna
because I
say,
had to go.
kudos to you for getting up early at 6:30, 7 o'clock on the West Coast and tuning in. But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up today. Darian Youm from the NASCAR Weekly Podcast, which by the way you can check them out Wednesday nights on one of their various YouTube channels. Whose channel are you gonna be on next week?
Danny B talks, and the special guest is to be determined. But I got a good feeling you guys will really like this one.
Same thing here. We're coming up with a special guest for this show next week as well, but we'll figure out something else next week. So, thank you guys very much. Enjoy your Thursday. Enjoy the racing at Daytona road course this weekend, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.